Hey guys, Chris here. Tonight we have a story from one of our viewers, and he's from North Carolina. He's got quite a frightening encounter he had. And before we get into that, of all the beers I'm drinking tonight, I have one called Bigfoot. Check that out. It's from the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, and it says it's a barley wine style ale. That sounds like it's got a lot of things going on. It's got barley, wine, ale, all in one bottle. Also, there's a Bigfoot right there. He's hiding in the trees from this old prospector who's on this side. So let's crack that open. I do like the bottle. It gets so nice and cold. It's just a little more inconvenient to have a bottle while you're in the backcountry when I do that. But obviously I'm in the cabin tonight. We have another atmospheric river going on in my area. And fortunately, I've just been getting the rain there. There we go. I've just been getting the rain, but the mountains here are just getting hammered with more snow. They got more snow they can deal with, and they're getting more still. So really concerning for those people up there. But cheers. That is really wild tasting. It's kind of got a wine-ish taste with a ale-ish, beerish taste. It's really interesting. It's actually really tasty. Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Okay, so this story came to me from one of our viewers. His name is Shannon from North Carolina. And Shannon, in 2006, was living in northern North Carolina, near the Tennessee border. Really rugged country up there, mountainous, forested, small rivers and streams, a lot of them. And even the Appalachian Trail runs right through there. He was living in a small town called Minneapolis, North Carolina. Population 300 people. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and that has 2.7 million people in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. So kind of a difference there, big town, small town, so to speak. So this was in Avery County, and Shannon worked in a small town to the east of Minneapolis called Newland, a little bit larger, about 5 miles away on a pretty windy road. And he was a manager for a pizza shop, and he was closing one night in November of 2006. Just after midnight, he was shutting the store down, and he got into his pickup truck. He had a Ford F-150, four-wheel drive, sat up really pretty high. He said he was 5'7", and when he opened the door, he had to really pull himself up to get into this pickup truck. He's heading home on this road, and it's called the Tow River Road, and it follows the Tow River. Tow River, I believe, flows kind of west. Really windy road, and when you follow these mountain roads, they follow really tight to the streams. And these streams can be very curvy, and so the road has to follow that. Otherwise, you got to put the road up in the mountains. That's how it is up where Jeanette lives in the Plumas National Forest. Follows the Feather River. And it was a moonlit night. There was no foliage in the trees, so the visibility was really good. He gets to this curve, and it kind of goes up like this on this Tow River Road, and it comes down like this. It's a really tight curve. He has to go really slow. Comes down, and then there's another curve. And as he's going around this second curve, he sees coming down a steep bank off to his right, a large shape coming down right when he's coming around this corner. And his first thought was, well, that's a black bear. Just big dark shape moving down the slope. And he just assumed that was a black bear. He could see it. As he was pulling up, this thing got into the ditch right next to the highway and started walking parallel to the highway, and he could see that it was on 2 feet. Clearly was on 2 feet, and it was huge, just massive. And as he's pulling up behind this thing as it's walking along the highway, he's thinking, I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing. He had heard stories of Bigfoot in North Carolina. He's even had family members that have seen them before, so he believed Bigfoot was real. But to really see one that close just was a shock to him. The truck light is shining on it as it's walking in the ditch. He pulls up alongside of it, and he said he looked out the passenger side window. As he was slowed down, he pulled up, and all he could see was, and this is what he said, from navel to nipple, so from here to here, of this large being walking right next to his truck. He said the muscles on it were enormous. It was definitely male. Super powerful looking, almost looked like a bodybuilder, supersized bodybuilder. You could see the arms swinging. And he was just in shock at how tall it was, how big it was next to this 4x4 truck that was pretty high off the ground. He immediately had this surge of adrenaline run through his body, and he said he started shaking, just shaking uncontrollably to see it that close. He said you could see it breathing, just the chest expanding and contracting like that as he was driving by. He went really slow. And then he continued driving, rolling past, and he looked in the rearview mirror, and he saw this thing pivot onto the highway, put its head down, and start chasing his truck down the highway. He dropped it into gear, gave it some gas, accelerated, and he looked again in the mirror, the rearview mirror, and it was gaining on him. Just absolutely freaked out of his mind that this thing was not only right there, but now it's chasing his vehicle. He did mention he had a pizza in the front seat of the truck, and who knows, maybe it smelled that or something. He didn't want to wait around to find out. He looked again, and it was gaining on him, was getting closer. And this is unreal. It's like a nightmare. He put the gas all the way to the floor and just held it there until the truck really started accelerating. He said it was going 35 miles an hour plus, and this thing was still running after his truck, but it finally started fading into the distance on the highway. He was like, this is unbelievable. He continued down this road towards Minneapolis. Still had a few miles to go. Finally gets to Minneapolis. There's a stop sign at that side of town. He blew right through it. Didn't even think about stopping. There was no way. Still has about a mile to go. Gets to near his house, and he starts laying on the horn continuously. He just lays on the horn as he's pulling up in the driveway. His wife turns on the front porch light and comes outside, and she says, she's yelling, "What is wrong with you? Are you crazy? The neighbors are sleeping." He opened the truck door, and he just yelled, "Keep the door open." He slammed the door shut. He ran into the house. She followed him. They closed the door of the house, and she said he was as white as a sheet. She could see that he was totally filled with fear. It took him about a half an hour to calm down just enough so he could start explaining what had just happened to him. His wife believed every word he said because she was never seen him this shaken up before. He said this thing was 8 to 9 feet tall. When it put its head down, it looked so powerful. It looked like an athlete, supersized athlete, when it started chasing him. Super agile, strong, fast. He said he had this feeling when he was pulling away from this thing that if it wanted to, it could have grabbed the back of the truck and just rolled him into the ditch. He said that. It was that big. It was just humongous how big it was. And I've had my little demo where I did the tape on the wall and I showed how big it was in comparison to at least me, 5'9". And just imagine that moving and running and the speed and the whatever they're capable of doing, to actually see that and to see the chest expanding and contracting while you're literally probably 4 feet, 5 feet away from it. It would just be awesome in a nightmarish kind of way, right? He also mentioned 2 days after this happened, a neighbor a couple of miles down the road told him they were in their kitchen one night and something really big walked by the kitchen window. Just a shape walked by the side of the house, kitchen window. Shannon said, the neighbor said the window was about 10 feet tall, so it was right in that range there. This neighbor went to the back door of the house, looked out the window, and he saw this thing come around the corner. It went right for the chicken coop. Put it left hand on one side, and it reached up, opened the top of the chicken coop. I don't know if it was nailed down. This Bigfoot reached in the chicken coop and grabbed out a chicken, bit it, broke its neck, and laid it on the ground. And did that 5 more times. It was so big and so tall, he could just reach in and just grab one and pull it out and kill it on the spot. This thing reached down, picked up the 6 of them, and just walked off into the forest and disappeared. Shannon also mentioned that he did not want to drive down that road anymore, particularly at night. He did not go in the outdoors for a few months. It was hard to be in the dark at night. He did mention this. He told some people about this. His wife believed him. Some people did not believe him. Many people said things like, oh, what were you smoking? What were you drinking? It's just your imagination. These things don't exist. It must have been something else. It's kind of the typical things when people see something and they try to explain what they saw to some people. But Shannon said that he knows what he saw, and he knows it wasn't a bear. He knows it wasn't a guy in a suit. He knows it wasn't his imagination. He knows that people don't believe him and understand him, and he doesn't need that and he doesn't care because he knows what he saw. And that is tonight's story from North Carolina, of all places. Looks like a great place to check out. So, all right, we're going to play the audio from my conversation. He's going to give more details and some additional stories about things that have happened to him that he knows of. So let's play that right now.
So I saw your story. That's pretty intense story to see that, get that close to one of these things. And
I was amazed.
Yeah. So can you describe, I understand you left the pizza place in Newland.
Yes.
About midnight, and then can you kind of take it from there and talk about
yeah, I left work, and instead of following the main highway, there is a dirt road. And it follows the Estetoe River, but everyone around there, we call it Toe River. And it's a curvy, sometimes one lane dirt road that goes, it cuts a few miles out of the trip. And I was just ready to go home, so I got in my truck and was headed home. And there is one curve, it's a real sharp curve. But as I was getting close to that curve, I seen this big, dark animal coming down the bank. It's a real steep bank. And I'm like, that's a big bear. Then I realized it was on its hind legs. I'm like, bears don't walk downhill on their hind legs. And as I got closer, it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And I drove a four-wheel drive F-150, so I was sitting up, pretty high. And as I drew up alongside of it, I looked out the passenger window, and like I said in my story, all I seen was from navel to nipple through my passenger window. And I thought, oh my God, I'm not seeing what I think I'm seeing, even though I've always believed. And as I passed it, I looked at my rearview mirror to see it again, and it like pivoted its entire body on its heels, dropped its head down to like look at me, and then it started coming after my truck. And I thought, this thing's big enough to grab my truck and just throw me down the hill. So I dropped gears and pushed it to the floor, and it was still gaining on me. I was doing about 35 miles an hour at that time.
Yeah.
It was gaining, so I mean, I just got all the speed up I could get until it started fading, and I went about another mile and a half till I got to the end of the road. I blew through the stop sign. There's no way I was stopping for this thing. I had no protection whatsoever except me and the windows in the truck.
Yeah.
And it's right there at the Minneapolis post office. And I was like a mile from my home, and I pulled in the driveway tooting my horn and just laying on it. It wasn't beep, beep, beep. I was just so I just laid on the horn and kept it blowing. When I pulled in the driveway, my wife came out and asked me what was wrong, and I was going to wake the neighbors up. And I said, leave the door open. And she said I came in, I was white as a sheet. And it took me a good half hour to get calmed down long enough to where I could get my words out to tell her what I'd seen.
Yeah.
But this thing was huge.
Can you describe when you pulled up what you saw? Because you said belly button to chest, but what did that look like as far as hair and
it resembled a gorilla, the torso. It had a little bit of bareness in the torso and chest, but it was muscular. It was like someone that had worked out. I mean, this guy had a six-pack.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And you could see the musculature. You could see the muscles moving with its breathing. Because, I mean, I slowed down a little bit because I'm like, that's too big to be a black bear. And black bears are pretty prevalent in that area. Actually, a lot of the locals in that area, they go bear hunting every year. And I've seen bears before. I've seen plenty of them. But a grizzly would run from this thing. And it was just, and then, a few days later, someone, a few miles away on another ridge, because it's a mountainous area, they were talking to their brother that they'd seen someone walk by their kitchen window. This guy's kitchen window's 10 feet off the ground.
Wow.
And he heard his chickens raising hell, and he looked out and he seen this large, dark thing reaching through the top. It raised the roof of the chicken coop up and was pulling his chickens out. And
from
it
the
was
top?
grabbing them. Yeah, it raised the roof. It raised the whole roof of the chicken coop up. It would reach in and it would pull them out. It was holding them by the head, and then it would bite their neck. That's what he said. And it walked off with like 6 chickens.
Did he put him in his other arm or something as he was collecting them?
It was laying it on the ground, and it just picked them all up by their broken necks and carried them away.
Yeah, I see. So he pulled one out, break its neck, and then set it in the ground, and then continued that till he got about 6 of them. Then he grabbed them
and walked away. And
wow.
Another, it was like in the 94, 95, I think. We were up there with my wife's family from that area. They had a family reunion, and there's a place called Elk River Falls. Well, we'd been there all day, and we left that night. As we were coming out back onto the main highway, and this is the God's honest truth, 6 black SUVs passed us, all blacked out, going straight down to where we just left. And it came across the police scanner because, it's the country. Everybody has a police scanner. That a guy had shot a red wolf on its hind legs because it was in his trash. There's no red wolves in North Carolina.
But it was on its hind legs?
Yes. And it went to attack this. Yeah, it was going to attack this guy, and he shot it.
Okay.
Why black SUVs instead of park rangers?
Got it. So, wow, that's really wild. Did you hear that report on the scanner then about the?
Yes, because we had left and we went. You know, my in-laws lived right there in the little town of Belt Park, and all these little towns are just right beside each other. And but yeah, he had a police scanner, and we got to his house. It was on. They were talking about a red wolf had been shot at Elk River Falls. And my father looked at me and said, "That's bullshit." He said, "There's no red wolves in North Carolina." He said, "There's no wolves in North Carolina, except for the wolf pack in, NC State."
Yeah. Yeah. How tall would you guess that it was?
Well, like I said, I drove a 4-wheel drive Ford pickup. My shoulders and head would come to the bottom of the window. I'm 5'7".
Right.
So this thing, all I seen from the passenger window was navel to nipple. This is huge. I'm coming up to its mid torso. So I'm saying 8 to 9 feet tall.
Yeah.
And it was so broad. I mean, I couldn't see the width of its shoulders. All I seen was its entire torso in my window.
I've heard they can be 5 feet or more wide at the shoulders.
That's amazing. I seen your video where you had one mapped out over your door with tape.
Yeah. Yep.
That's accurate. That's so accurate. I mean, that is basically just the size of this thing I've seen.
That's incredible. Now, when you were pulling past it and he pivoted on his heels and was chasing you, and you look in the mirror, how could you see him? What kind of lighting was helping you see the shape?
A full moon.
Okay.
It was a full moon. It was mid to late November. There's no leaves on the trees. When the moon shines there, it shines bright. And my tail lights, this thing, I could see it coming. I mean, it was as soon as I passed it, it immediately turned and came after me. So it was right there. And
when it was chasing you, can you describe that? Like, what were the arms doing? I'm imagining it was like pumping, like somebody running. But
it ran like a man. It ran. It sprinted like an Olympic sprinter, but was leaning forward like it was trying to get closer to me. And it was gaining at me doing about 35.
Wow.
And that's when I dropped down to a lower gear to get the hell out of there. That scared me to death. Yeah.
You mentioned that you were shaking. Like, as soon as you pulled up to it and you realized how large it was, can you describe the what you was going through your mind and your body?
Well, after amazement, you get that fear shock, that adrenaline rush of fear, like from a sudden scare from a scary movie or something. And it was just like a total jolt of adrenaline. Heart started pumping, the fear crawling up your back, your hair standing on end, and that mixed with amazement. And I know I was screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," because I did not want this thing to catch me.
So he comes down the bank, and then he hits the road, and then does he kind of turn to start walking down the road?
Well, he stopped at the ditch, because I pulled up right alongside him at that moment.
Oh.
And it was a male.
You saw because parts.
Well,
male parts?
Vaguely, it's just the build was male.
Got it.
It was a man's chest and man muscle, and it's like as soon as I passed him, he just turned, and I actually had pizza in the truck. Maybe he smelled the pizza. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, who knows? You don't want to hang around and see if he's going to give you a tip or not for the pizza. But yeah,
exactly. I wasn't delivering to him.
yeah.
But yeah, I had pizza. I think I passed him, and maybe he caught a whiff of the pizza, and that's why he came after me. I don't know. I didn't hang around to find out. If I would have thought quicker, maybe I'd have thrown a piece out.
Yeah, exactly. Really, pretty tall ridges and stuff, and very, very forested, completely forested.
Oh yes,
Really.
and it's amazing. I mean, it is so thick. People don't really appreciate, the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Smoky Mountains, whatever you want to call them, but the Appalachian Mountains they're so thick. They're the oldest mountains there are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the river just winds all over the place here, and the road's trying to follow it, so that's a really curvy road, and yeah.
It really does. It follows it and crosses it a couple times, but it's beautiful. And if you ever got out and hiked, I mean, you can see there's places for these things to live. There's plenty of food. There's plenty of water.
Yeah. I just did a street view from Minneapolis here, which is so funny because I grew up northwest Minneapolis, little bit bigger.
Minneapolis.
Yeah, totally. No, I got a good view of the river here. Look at that, and this is I think the Google truck got a fall shot because there's no leaves in the trees here, and yeah, I see the river. It's a nice. I could imagine some trout in there.
They stock it every April.
Oh, that's nice. So, did you have any longer-term effects from seeing this thing?
I didn't go down that road for a couple of months. I didn't go in the woods for a few months. I totally stayed out of the woods. If it wasn't on the highway, I didn't go.
Yeah.
It really affected me like that. And now when I do go out, I'm always looking, listening, because I think back to when I was a child, because I was raised up in the mountains in Virginia, where I grew up. And I can recall whistles and stuff when I was out in the woods by myself as a child, that I realized, maybe that wasn't birds now.
Yeah. That's definitely something that they do, from what I've heard and talked to other people. Did your wife believe you?
But she said that I was so quiet and I was shaking so bad, she didn't doubt me a bit.
Yeah. Good.
And because her father had told her tales, because he grew up on Toe River. And he had heard and seen things his whole life. And, other people that grew up when he did, and they would it was a common knowledge that there's something there.
Okay, so that was Shannon from North Carolina. I really enjoyed talking with him. That was a lot of fun and really interesting. If you guys like stories about the strange, unexplained, and things that go bump in the night, please like and subscribe. You guys know how to do all that stuff. I really appreciate that. And I am really looking forward to spring. It's just been a really rough winter up here between the rain and the snow and the inaccessibility to get outdoors. And it's been windy and rainy the last few days. It's just going to continue on. But spring is coming. I'm really looking forward to that. So just want to say that I'm just really looking forward to spring and getting out. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for your great comments. And we will see you on the next one. As always, keep hiking.